So hey everyone, thanks for having me here. We're starting this conference with cryptocurrency, which is already like a huge win for the industry. So actually, I need my clicker.
Where's the clicker?
So before I'm starting, I wanted to share with you a short story. So before I started Colu, I spent a couple of years living in Cyprus, and while there was great weather and great people, there was also a financial crisis when I was there. And one of the things that I remember the most are those lines of people waiting to withdraw just 50 euros from their own bank account, and this was their daily allowance. Thank you. And while it was their own money, they didn't have access to that, to their own money. And for me, this was the same time that I found about Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and all of that. And the connection between the two is what got me into starting Colu in 2012 and getting into the industry. So money. Can you click for me? It's not working. All right, so money is much more than a means of exchange. It creates social interaction and connections between people. And one of the tools around the world for already more than 100 years that created to create those social interaction and solve different financial problems were the idea of community currencies. And community currencies around the world, of course, it's not a new idea, exists, like I said, for 100 years. We're lacking different capabilities to bring them into the mainstream audience. And I will talk about some of them. So for example, trust. How do you create trust for a new currency system that is not backed by the government, right? Everyone trusts the government, at least most of us. The second one is how do you create an incentive model for people to use a new currency that is not the government currency? How do you incentivize to make transaction and use this new currency? And the third one is a little bit more technical, is how do you create the liquidity and tradability for a new currency, sometimes issued by 10,000 people in a village, right? Because if you don't have enough trades, you don't have a price for that. And before going into community currency, I want to talk a little bit about communities in general. So, of course, this word is overused today, right? Everything is a community. The people on Facebook are a big, happy community. People sitting in the same office space are a community. But there were a lot of researchers looking into what is a community. And there are different parameters that we can look to understand how strong a community is, and I'll go through a few of them. So the first one, membership. How much am I invested in a specific community, or how much I feel welcome in a specific community? The next one is influence. How much of an influence I have on decision-making in a specific community. Third one is the integration and fulfillment of needs. What are the services that the specific community provides? Does it provide the social interaction that I'm looking for? And the last one is the shared emotional connection, which mostly goes into the historical connection of people, how people, what their historical connection. For example, in Israel, of course, we have a big historical connection. But let me take you back to the extreme scenario of communities. Back then, when people used to live in caves and going to hunt to put food on the table, every day they needed to choose the people that will go hunt. And there were people who didn't want to put their own life in risk for the rest of the community, because back then hunting was a very dangerous thing to do. People died. And what happened to those people who didn't agree to sacrifice something from themselves for the rest of the community? They slowly have been kicked out of the community. And in the end, if we're looking at how to measure with one specific thing, what is the strength of a community, we can look at what people are willing to put in risk for the benefit of the rest of the community. Now, when we're taking that to our world today, it goes out to money, right? Not everyone putting their life to a community in risk, so it goes out to money. Now let's hear a short video of Professor Dan Ariely, who is also our chief behavioral economist, talking about this trust building within a community.
One way to think about trust is to think about a game we call the public's good game. You have 10 people, they don't know each other, they never meet each other. They wake up every morning and each one of them gets $10. And they can either keep the money for themselves or they could put it in a central pot. If they put it in a central pot, the money multiplies 5 times. In the evening, divided equally by all 10 members. They put the money back into the central pot. 10 people, $10, $100, multiply 5 times, $500, equally divided by everybody, everybody gets $50. Life is good. And this goes on for a while. And then at some point, somebody betrays the public good. At some point, somebody puts 0 in. What happens now? 9 people put $10, $90, multiply 5 times, $450, divide equally by everybody, everybody gets $45, but that SOB who didn't put the money in has 55. They have the 45 they got, plus the 10 they didn't put in. Okay, so now they betrayed the public good and they benefited from it selfishly, everybody was hurt. What happens in the next trial? What happens on the next day? Nobody puts anything in. Think about what it means. This is a game that in economics we think has 2 equilibria. There's an equilibria where everybody participates, and there's an equilibria where nobody participates. And there's nothing in the middle, like you don't have half the people participates and half the people don't. And the equilibria where everybody participates is very fragile. It's enough for one person to betray it, and it goes to the bad equilibria. The bad equilibria is very stable. If 2 people start participating all of a sudden and donating, it doesn't really change. And this is, in my mind, the way to view trust. When we live in a world that has high trust, everybody benefits, right? It's a great equilibrium. But as people start betraying the public trust, the whole thing collapses and we all suffer. How do we design a system to create trust? And to the extent that we can design that system, everybody benefits. And how do we create a system where we don't allow people to betray the trust, or if they betray the trust, we basically push them quickly back into the good equilibrium? That's really the task. And there's lots of things about designing a system that has to do with trust. It's how much we help each other, how much we know each other, whether people give each other comments, and whether we have the mechanisms to support trust building.
Thank you. The world is undergoing the largest wave of urban growth in history. More than half of the world population now live in cities, and by 2030, this number is about to swell to 5 billion. Now, that movement is happening, and we're moving into cities which are colder, relationship getting lost. But millennials still want to feel connected. They still want to be part of a community. And there is a huge movement now seeing people talking about communities becoming the new economic units. So what all of that has to do with cryptocurrency, and I'll move a little bit faster because we're out of time. Cryptocurrencies are very, very interesting and have a lot of advantages. Blockchain has a lot of advantages, but there is one thing that people they're not talking about, and that's how cryptocurrencies create a network effect, how they turn users from regular users into stakeholder in an idea, in a community, in a network, right? Because if you got in early in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other cryptocurrency other than making a lot of money, you're also become part of that community because you own a stake in it. If you're a developer, you will start contribute code, or if you're an evangelist, you will start promote the idea. And that's really the essence of it. So what Colu is doing, we're taking all of those advantages of cryptocurrencies and how they create the network effect, turn people into stakeholder, into existing communities around the world. And I know that all that sounds like an utopian economy, but it's already happening. So Colu operates in 4 communities around the world without those cryptocurrencies, having more than 120 transactions on a monthly basis. In order to solve all of the problems that I talked about before, we created that network that solves the trust, the incentive mechanism, and the liquidity problem that I talked about before. So taking the idea of cryptocurrencies and their advantages around the world and how they create a network effect can really solve problems for communities, both financially and socially, in a way that we never saw before. Thank you very much.